So do you still think a DDoS attack is just this massive, dumb flood of brute force traffic trying to knock a server offline? If so, well, you might be stuck a decade in the past. We're so used to thinking of these attacks as giant, noisy digital battering rams. But what happens when that battering ram suddenly stops trying to break the door down and actually learns how to pick the lock? Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're looking at the evolution of DDoS, when botnets learn to think. To really grasp this massive shift, let's just quickly recap the basics of a traditional distributed denial of service, or DDoS attack. Historically, the setup was pretty simple, right? A hacker hijacks a massive network of zombie computers, a botnet, and tells them all to just blast giant floods of traffic at a single target. We're talking basic HTTP floods, SYN floods, all of that. The whole goal was sheer exhaustion: max out the CPU, jam up the bandwidth, and drain session capacities until the server basically just throws its hands up and collapses. But here's the thing. Those traditional brute force methods have some pretty glaring flaws today. These dumb bots leave totally obvious, highly predictable traffic signatures. I mean, an HTTP flood looks exactly like an HTTP flood every single time. Because of that predictability, standard content delivery networks and web application firewalls can easily spot them a mile away. They just build a signature and drop those malicious packets instantly. Now, here is where the script entirely flips, and honestly, it's pretty terrifying. Enter artificial intelligence. AI doesn't just flood your network. It watches. It learns. Imagine an attacker that automatically tests how your website responds. It sends a packet, and if it gets blocked, it actually analyzes why. It figures out exactly what kind of traffic gets through your firewall, what frequency triggers your defenses, and exactly where your rate limits are. It's not a static tool anymore. It's literally acting like a self-evolving hacker, constantly probing your setup in real time. And this is where it turns into a total Trojan horse. To slip past the guards, the AI has to camouflage itself. So it completely ditches that unnatural, obvious bot behavior. Instead, it actually learns and mimics how real humans browse. It'll copy natural mouse movement rhythms, vary its click intervals, and even perfectly fake page dwell times. Like, it'll sit on a product page just long enough to look exactly like you or me, hesitating before adding something to our cart. When an attack perfectly mimics a human like that, it becomes almost impossible for a defense system to block it without accidentally blocking real, paying customers. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it changes the attack strategy. Because it blends in so well, it can launch surgical strikes. The AI actively scans your underlying website architecture, hunting for the absolute weakest links. This is the big shift to Layer 7, the application layer. The AI figures out exactly which API eats up the most CPU, which database query is the absolute heaviest, or which WebSocket is the easiest to jam up. And then it concentrates all its fire right on those specific bottlenecks. So the targeting has fundamentally shifted. Back in the day, the focus was on the network layer. Attackers just wanted to clog your bandwidth with basic packets, which, required a ton of noisy volume. But today, the targets are way up at the application layer. The AI goes straight for complex database queries and CPU-heavy APIs. And this intelligent targeting means the AI absolutely does not need a massive flood of traffic to crash a system. A few perfectly placed heavy requests can literally bring a massive enterprise infrastructure to its knees. And that brings us to a major escalation: the AI collaborative botnet. In the old days, every single zombie computer reported back to a central command and control server. If defenders managed to find and take down that central server, boom, the botnet died. Well, not anymore. Now, every single bot operates with its own independent local AI agent. It makes its own decisions on when to attack, how to hide, and what traffic works best. Even if the central server gets completely wiped out, the decentralized botnet just keeps on running completely on its own. The way these independent bots coordinate globally is practically early-stage autonomous cyber warfare. Just think about their logic for a second. Step 1, the bots continuously analyze global latency across different regions. Step 2, they find the weakest ISPs or the most vulnerable CDN nodes that are easy to break into. And Step 3, they automatically adjust their global attack strategy. They'll just silently shift their traffic from secure regions over to vulnerable ones in perfect synchronization. No human intervention required. Because of this hyperintelligence, the damage is absolutely catastrophic, even with ridiculously low traffic volumes. Clinical efficiency has totally replaced sheer volume. Just a handful of these smart requests can trigger database locks, cause massive cache crashes, or create fatal queue jams. We're actually seeing instances where these perfectly disguised low-volume requests trick Kubernetes auto-scaling into just spinning wildly out of control, or they entirely exhaust an API thread pool. The application doesn't even crash from the outside. It literally chokes on itself from the inside. Which leads us to this pretty chilling takeaway straight from our source material. The real danger isn't huge traffic. It's not knowing you're being attacked. Just let that sink in. When an attack barely uses any traffic, acts exactly like your normal users, and dynamically dodges your firewalls, you don't get alarms. There are no red flashing lights. Your database just suddenly locks up one afternoon and you have absolutely no idea why. So the crucial point is, how do you actually fight back against a ghost? The old shields are totally broken. You simply cannot fight a dynamic, thinking machine with a static, rigid rulebook. If the attacking force is driven by artificial intelligence, well, your enterprise security has absolutely no choice but to undergo a massive paradigm shift. Your defense has to become AI-driven too. Modern AI defense means looking way, way beyond basic IPs and packet counts. Your defensive AI needs to know what your true normal users actually look like, using behavior analytics and real-time attack pattern learning. We're talking about deploying dynamic rate limits that adjust on the fly. You need automated anomaly isolation that can instantly quarantine a suspicious session without just dropping the user. And you need deep device fingerprinting to tell the absolute difference between, say, my actual laptop and an AI just pretending to be my laptop. It's all about analyzing the complex overall session. But listen, just upgrading your security software isn't some magic silver bullet. Your actual application architecture has to fundamentally change if you want to survive this. Because these attacks target the application layer, you have to build in serious resilience. We're talking about putting in strict circuit breakers, so if an API gets stressed, it fails gracefully instead of taking down the whole system. You need deep API isolation, robust protections for your queues, and a separation of database reads and writes. Basically, you have to design your application assuming it is actively being hunted by a smart adversary. So to really summarize this entire paradigm shift, just look at where we were 10 years ago compared to where we're heading tomorrow. A decade ago, DDoS was entirely about brute force and violence. It was loud, it was dumb, and it was relatively easy to block if you just had a big enough internet pipe. Tomorrow, and frankly even today, it's all about intelligence and coevolution. The modern attack is stealthy, it's low volume, it's highly targeted, and it is constantly learning from every single move your security team makes. And let me be absolutely clear about this. We are not talking about some distant, hypothetical sci-fi scenario here. The invisible war of AI versus AI has already begun, right now, on the network. It's an urgent, everyday reality of the modern internet. Literally every single day, there are silent battles happening in the background between attacking algorithms probing for a tiny weakness and defending algorithms actively reshaping the digital walls to keep them out. Which leaves us with one final provocative question to wrap up this explainer. I want you to really think about your own infrastructure. Look at your web application firewalls, look at your traffic monitoring. Are your current defenses truly prepared for an invisible enemy? One that doesn't scream at the gates, but quietly slips inside, disguised as your best customer. It's time to find out before they find out for you.